Egypt, the gift of the Nile. In Egypt, the most important event of the year was the flooding of the Nile River. Once a year, the Nile River would flood and cover the surrounding land. As the water drained away, it left a layer of silt, fine sand that is very fertile. As the water drained away, it left a layer of silt behind that turned the desert into green fields. The Nile offered a thin strip of fertile land in an otherwise barren desert land. Because the water from the Nile River drained away and did not evaporate, salinization was not a problem in Egypt like it was in Mesopotamia. Ancient Egypt was a hot, dry land. It often did not rain for years. The Nile River was the only source of water. The Nile River is over 1,000 kilometers long, and the Nile's source is deep in the middle of Africa. The Nile is formed by rain and melting snow. When the Nile meets the Mediterranean Sea, it divides into a triangle-shaped delta. This is the triangle-shaped delta here, this shape. The Egyptians found they could grow wheat, barley, and corn easily along the Nile River. Over time, they built dikes, dams, and canals to irrigate their crops. The Nile was very important to Egyptian culture. Besides making farming possible, the Nile was a highway for boats. It would act as the major transportation system for both people and goods. The Nile also provided Egyptians with papyrus. Papyrus, a plant that grew by the Nile, was used by the Egyptians to make paper. The Egyptians also used the Nile as a food source. They fished and hunted, and as a place for entertainment, like swimming, boating, and playing other games. So here is papyrus. And you can see that they're boating along the Nile in this boat called a felucca. And then they're taking water from the Nile and they're going to put it on the plants, called irrigation. And then here's a picture of the Egyptians hunting along the Nile. You can see he's got a tool here he's going to kill a bird or something with. So here's a map of Egypt, and you can see the green all along here. That refers to plants, right? Out here is just desert, sand. So the Nile provided fresh water. The Nile is formed by rainfall and snow melt in the middle of Africa. So the Nile actually comes from way down here. You can't see it, but it comes from the mountains. So rain that falls from the sky and snow that melts in the mountains. The annual flooding of the Nile River enabled civilization to exist in Egypt along the river valley. Also, four natural barriers protect Egypt from invaders. To the west, the desert. To the east, the Red Sea. To the south, many rapids on the Nile River make it difficult. So, fast-moving water along the Nile, if you're traveling by boat, would be very dangerous. To the north, the Mediterranean Sea. Okay, the ocean. This protection allowed the civilization of Egypt to develop. So you can imagine four things protecting Egypt, like walls. Difficult to travel through the desert. You can't really swim across the ocean. You have to have a boat. And then, of course, if you did have a boat going up the Nile River, it would be very dangerous because of the fast-moving water or rapids here. So, questions. Number 1, why is Egypt called the gift of the Nile? Number 2, what is salinization? Number 3, why was salinization not a problem in Egypt? Number 4, how was the Nile River formed? Number 5, what crops did the Egyptians grow along the Nile River? Number 6, what other purposes did the Nile serve other than water for farming? So serve means what other purposes did it have? Or what did it give other than water for farming? From what you know about Egypt, what kinds of goods and materials may have been transferred along the Nile River?